Yes, a last-minute change to the top of tonight's show, to that huge breaking news. The police investigation into Angela Rayner is examining multiple allegations and is not merely limited to potential electoral law offences. That's according to reports that have just come out this evening. A source has told The Times that at least a dozen officers at Greater Manchester Police are investigating the Labour deputy leader over where she lived in the 20s.
The political battlefield has just erupted. Angela Rayner, once a rising star in Labour, is now at the centre of a shocking legal storm. Accused of abusing power to rig elections and block Reform UK, she's facing the courtroom in a scandal that could shake the very foundations of British democracy. Is this a legitimate case or a politically motivated takedown? Let's break it all down.
Trying to adjust issues around the Representation of the People Act, this is the electoral law element, and of course that's significant because those offences are meant to be registered and investigated within 12 months. So of course now we're talking about different things. We don't know, for instance, the kind of exact detail of what they're looking into, but one potential issue, if it's involving two different houses, is capital gains tax, of course, and there is no kind of statutory limit on that, which would mean that potentially you could see an investigation and potential criminal offences, etc., being committed, and it wouldn't have a time limit on it. And so that's what we're really interested in. I've just been talking to some Conservative MPs, and they say, you know, look, it's tax that really ought to be the thing that, if it's going to do for her, that's the thing that's going to do for her, because, you know, there is no limitation on that. And of course, that's the thing that did, for instance, for Nadeem Zahawi, and some of them are pushing now for an HMRC investigation as well. So I think this is quite a significant development tonight, and The Times also reveals that at least a dozen officers are involved in this. So
the exit poll results suggest a strong outcome, reflecting Keir Starmer's efforts in reshaping the Labour Party and positioning it as a representative of working people. While official results are yet to be confirmed, if the final count aligns with the exit poll, Labour could gain the mandate to move past years of instability.
Angela Rayner, she hasn't got the intellectual capacity. I'm sure she's a lovely person, but she just hasn't got the intellectual capacity to keep kind of telling fibs correctly. You know, if you're going to, all politicians lie, all politicians embellish, but you've got to have a certain amount of intelligence to make sure that those lies and embellishments all kind of like fit together properly. You know, so if you're challenged about each one of them individually, you can keep that lie or embellishment going, even if it's only a kind of white lie. With Angela Rayner, she just doesn't have the capacity, the mental capacity to do that properly. So she immediately stumbles. So one of the things that really made me laugh was...
In a dramatic turn, Angela Rayner reportedly broke down in tears while defending her decision, facing growing backlash from opposition parties and legal experts questioning its legitimacy. The controversy stems from her decision to postpone elections in 9 council areas. The Deputy Prime Minister confirmed that elections scheduled for May in these regions would be delayed, with new elections set for May 2026 following the transition from a 2-tier council system to unitary authorities.
When I heard that the Labour government, despite any manifesto commitment, want to completely change the shape of local government, and that is now being used by the Conservative Party, who in fact run most of the county councils, as a reason to cancel the elections. No, I'm not making it up. Over half of the county councillors in Britain have said, because these changes are coming, we want the elections cancelled on May the 1st. It looks like about 10 million of you who would have had the right to vote on that day will not be able to.
The affected regions, East Sussex, West Sussex, Essex, Hampshire, the Isle of Wight, Norfolk, Suffolk and Surrey, will see over 5 million people unable to vote this year. Discussions on the issue have underscored the outrage over cancelling local elections for such a large population. The government defends the decision as part of a broader local governance reorganisation. The Housing, Communities and Local Government Secretary has encouraged more council areas, including those covering both county and district councils, to transition to unitary authorities. Additionally, 7 new devolution areas have been proposed, with plans for mayoral elections in May 2026 across Cumbria, Cheshire and Warrington, Greater Essex, Hampshire, Norfolk and Suffolk, Sussex and Brighton and Lancashire.
Absolutely monstrous. We haven't heard a big debate about it because both Labour and the Conservatives agree. They are terrified of the rise of reform. They know just how well we're going to do on May the 1st, and they've cancelled the elections in many of our strongest areas. Well, I promise you, we will fight those that are still up. We will do well, but I'm pretty angry. This denial of our democracy is something that is fundamentally un-British anti-British, it's undemocratic, and it shows how rotten the whole system is now in British politics. There is no doubt in my mind, when you look at it, that Britain...
In addressing Parliament, Rayner stated that some areas required significant work to facilitate devolution and restructuring, prompting certain regions to request election delays. Consider the reaction if Nigel Farage were Prime Minister and Reform UK had come to power, only to announce that local elections would be postponed until May 2026. Such a move would undoubtedly trigger national outrage. Yet this is exactly what has happened under Labour's leadership. Rayner stressed that the government's default stance was to proceed with elections unless there was a compelling justification for postponement, with a high threshold for approval. She disclosed that only half of the postponement requests had been granted after thorough deliberation to ensure they aligned with the government's commitment to devolution. She argued that holding elections for councils set to be dissolved with no clear replacements would be an irresponsible use of taxpayer money.
Rayner's devolution revolution sounds almost as dreary as it actually is. She looks now set because lots of areas are being reorganised with a view to everyone having an elected mayor. Already, I believe Greater Lincolnshire, Hull and East Yorkshire have been assigned mayors, or at least they will be allowed to vote for their mayors. Also up for this are Hampshire, Sussex, Kent, Essex and Cheshire and others, all earmarked to become areas with elected mayors. Now, that's okay, I suppose, although I do worry. I just feel that, the more you devolution sounds great, but the more you devolve, the more you make government local government preside over national government, the more difficult a country becomes to govern. So I wonder whether or not we're going too far down this road. But the main point to make here is Angela Rayner, funnily enough, said, these areas that are getting reorganised, they were going to have their local elections in May, along with the rest of the local councils of this country. But maybe they won't have them now while they're in the process of reorganisation. Perhaps if they feel, that this reorganisation will somehow or other make it difficult to have these elections, they should let us know and we won't have those elections. In other words, that's the way Angela Rayner is plotting to get out of the inevitable humiliation that the Labour Party will suffer come May, because they're going to get a shellacking in the local elections. They're going to get humiliated. So what's she trying to do? She's trying to stop the elections. It's outrageous.
Many critics see a double standard. For years, Labour has accused the Conservative government of corruption, cronyism and misusing taxpayer money, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the party faces its own allegations of manipulating the electoral system for political advantage. Rayner has challenged opponents to justify the cost of holding elections under these circumstances. But Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has condemned the delays, calling them a direct attack on democracy and accusing Rayner of blatant election interference. Of the affected councils, all but one were under Conservative control, with Reform UK expected to gain significant support in key areas like Essex and Thurrock. Meanwhile, Conservative Shadow Housing Secretary Kevin Henry criticised Rayner, claiming her actions would centralise power rather than promote true devolution. In Parliament, Henry argued that, despite Rayner's claims, she was not eliminating outdated governance structures, but instead establishing new strategic authorities that would align with Labour's central government. He called the move a political manoeuvre designed to advance an unpopular socialist agenda under the pretense of local governance reform.
A couple of sort of fairly vague lines in the Labour manifesto talking about increasing devolution, but nothing on the scale of what's been foisted upon these counties. And so there's 9 councils, mixture of counties and unitaries, that have had their request to cancel their elections accepted. There were a number of other councils that tried. And quite frankly, it's a disgrace. We live in a democracy. Part of being in a democracy is the ability to vote in our elected representatives, but also, crucially, vote them out. And the councillors that were elected, or the last time this set of councillors were elected was back in 2021. It was the height of Boris's kind of vaccine bounce. The political context has changed very dramatically since then, as we all know. And we think that even if the government and councils want to go ahead with these structural changes, we think these elections should be used as an opportunity for those people who want to carry on those negotiations to get the mandate to deliver the change they want. If you want to take on more powers, then you need to also be held to account for the way that you've exercised the powers you've already had. So in Essex, in Surrey, in Hampshire, Isle of Wight, and Sussex, these councillors are getting away with the ability to hide from their electorate, and that's outrageous. 5.5 million people are being denied their right to vote.
And I've been about...
Polling expert Lord Hayward stated that Angela Rayner's decision to postpone certain local elections effectively blocked Reform UK's best chance to secure its first council. According to him, Nigel Farage's party, which has been climbing in national polls, was poised to win control of Thurrock Council if the elections had gone ahead. With Thurrock identified as a prime target for Reform UK, the election delays have become a major point of contention. Thurrock has historically been a stronghold for UKIP, and the postponed elections could have marked a breakthrough for Reform UK. By delaying them, Rayner has effectively prevented a high-profile Labour defeat that might have dominated headlines in May. Thurrock Council currently comprises 27 Labour councillors, 13 Conservative councillors and 9 independents, with all seats originally set for contest. Reform UK had already made electoral gains in the area, with James McMurdo winning a seat as the party's MP for South Basildon and East Thurrock in the last general election. The party also secured second place in the Thurrock constituency, which covers the rest of the council's jurisdiction. However, Thurrock Council is now set to merge with other parts of Essex to form a new unitary authority following its bankruptcy last year.
The cancelling of these elections, you call it the cowardice of the political class. It's 9 areas, isn't it, that are having their elections delayed as a result of this kind of what you might call restructuring, if you like, of some regions. But I mean, when they were standing for government, I don't remember them talking about doing this. I mean, I might have missed it somewhere in the manifesto, but was there any notion that this was going to happen until relatively recently?
There might have been
On Wednesday, Angela Rayner announced that local elections would be postponed in 9 council areas. Reform UK has strongly opposed the decision, insisting that the elections proceed as planned, arguing that democracy is being undermined by a government fearful of electoral competition. With court proceedings ongoing, the political fallout from Rayner's actions could have serious and lasting consequences for her position in government. A recent survey has revealed that Reform UK has reached its highest level of support ever recorded. The poll places Nigel Farage's party in the lead with 29%, reflecting a 2-point increase from the previous week. Labour follows in second place at 25%, while the Conservatives have dropped by 3 points to 18%. Meanwhile, the Liberal Democrats have gained 2 points, reaching 13%, while the Greens remain steady at 10%. Conducted among 2,487 British adults, the survey marks a significant milestone for Reform UK. Party chairman Zulfikar Yusuf described the results as a huge shift, highlighting that it was the first time Conservative support had fallen below 20% in a poll, with Reform UK approaching 30%.
If there was a general election tomorrow, more people would vote for Nigel Farage and Reform than would vote for the Conservatives, and this is the very first time a poll has found this, for Labour as well. Nigel Farage, up until now, has led what I think you could...
This surge in polling comes amid the controversial election delays, fueling suspicions about the government's motives. Almost all the affected councils were under Conservative control, and Reform UK was expected to make significant gains in these areas. Polling experts suggest that Angela Rayner's decision to postpone the elections in Thurrock may have blocked Reform UK's best opportunity for victory, given the area's history of supporting UKIP. Proceeding with the elections could have provided Reform UK with the momentum they were seeking. With the elections now postponed, many voters feel robbed of their chance for political change. Meanwhile, the legal battle over Rayner's decision continues, with allegations that she deliberately delayed the elections to suppress Reform UK's rise. As questions mount over whether her actions were politically motivated, Rayner remains defiant, insisting that the delays were necessary for a smooth governance transition.
Not good news for Labour this morning. Apparently, they've slumped into 3rd place. That's according to a recent voting intentions poll. They trail the Conservatives, and here's the really sharp bit. For the first time, they're trailing Nigel Farage's Reform UK.
As controversy grows, the UK's political landscape is shifting. The coming months will reveal whether Reform UK can capitalise on its momentum, or if Labour will withstand the backlash and maintain its hold on power. Please like and subscribe to the channel for more updates like this.